Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
We turn our attention next to a very different story. That's a bit politics-free, actually, for the next couple of hours, unless something remarkable happens. I'd take a moment out of that before I tell you about 4 pigs at a primary school in Lymington. It's an astonishing story, this. You have no choice but to do the news in certain ways. So Boris Johnson yesterday had a meeting with the Secretary of State for Trade, the American Secretary of State for Trade. Whether you, like me, consider Donald Trump to be repellent or not, Brexit means that we can't afford to alienate America. It's yet another self-inflicted tragedy. And I haven't been able to find out anything about it. A few sort of warm words. But America also announced yesterday policies with regard to solar panels and washing machines, a couple of other things that are profoundly protectionist. They're really, really bad news for countries and companies that import into or export to America. I haven't been able to find anything about that. British Foreign Secretary talking to a senior American politician, and I haven't been able to find anything about Yemen or Saudi Arabia or Syria or any of these things. But what I do know is that Boris Johnson's friends spent yesterday afternoon ringing around the newspapers telling their contacts that at Cabinet today he would be demanding that Theresa May gives more money to the NHS. Last time I checked, the economic situation in this country hasn't improved since Boris Johnson sat in this studio talking to other LBC presenters about how there was a financial necessity to cut emergency services, how he had no choice but to close fire stations, how he had no choice but to take fire engines out of commission. So I know this is par for the course, but if I stop pointing it out, no one else is going to. So he is talking out of his flabby backside. There's no polite way of putting it. But we have to sort of go along with it because he's foreign secretary. It's like Donald Trump. The president of America says something, and however much you might want to ignore it, you can't really, because he's the president of the United States of America. What we have now is Boris Johnson's friends yesterday ringing around their chums on various Tory-leaning newspapers and giving them this great story about Cabinet tomorrow. He's going to really lay down the law and he's going to give Theresa a right old shoeing about the NHS and this notion that somehow they're giving up the ground of the health service to Labour because the polling shows that no one's going to trust them on it anyway. He will be the one to stand up for that, demand 100 million quid a week for the health service while not mentioning that he campaigned on a promise of 350. Do you see what I mean? And so it goes on. And now, of course, we have no choice. The British media has little choice but to report the response to the story that we were reporting this morning, which is that the Chancellor has said no to Boris Johnson. So what does he do now? He goes away saying, well, don't blame me. I thought we should have had more money for the NHS. Albeit money coming out of budgets that I've previously claimed were so small and strained that we couldn't afford to keep our fire engine presence on the streets of the city I used to be mayor of. Oh, and that 46 million quid I threw up the wall on a bridge that a brick never got laid on? No. Don't mention the money I've wasted. Just mention the money that doesn't exist that I've demanded goes to the NHS in order to further undermine the Prime Minister and further jockey for position in the looming leadership election. And that, my friends, is politics. And that's why I increasingly wonder what the role of journalism is supposed to be at the moment. And that's also why we're talking about a vegan parent and 4 little pigs. It's 7 minutes after 11, and I love this story. Are they definitely still going to the slaughterhouse? I thought I'd heard this morning that they weren't going to the slaughterhouse anymore and that these 4 little pigs had had a stay of execution. They have to go to the slaughterhouse eventually, don't they? Because you can't keep 4 giant pigs as pets. But there is a little school in Lymington in Hampshire, smack in the middle of the New Forest, absolutely beautiful part of the world. And they have had a rather splendid project under which 4 little piglets have been reared in the school. My school, we had a chinchilla. At my no, it wasn't even a chinchilla. That was a friend. What did we have at school? We used to take it home in the holidays if you were really lucky. I think it might have been white mice. These guys got pigs. I bet they don't take them home in the holidays. Imagine turning up on the first day of the summer holidays when your mum picks you up from school. You say, oh, we're taking home an enormous pig for the summer. So there's 4 little pigs, and they've reared them from the start. the story has indeed moved on. I thought earlier that they weren't going to be slaughtered anymore because a father recently adopted veganism, a chap called Vincent Cook, which lets newspaper journalists have a lot of fun because they can call him Vegan Vincent. Vegan Vincent Cook had found a sanctuary that was prepared to take the piglets for free. But the head teacher, this is going to be a straight whose side are you on, isn't it? Head teacher or Vincent Vegan Cook, I think, isn't it? Yes. He found a sanctuary that was prepared to take the piglets for free. He started a petition which now has over 30,000 signatures calling for them not to be slaughtered. But the school is apparently standing firm and insists that all 4 Tamworth and Gloucester Old Spot pigs will be slaughtered in February to teach children about where food comes from. And I am squarely and supremely on the side of the head teacher, but only because, looking at my youngest, I think this will put more kids off meat than on. I have somehow ended up siring a vegetarian, a proper vegetarian who is in it for the long haul. How do I know this? Because on Halloween, she refused to eat any sweets that had gelatin in them. And for a 9-year-old girl to refuse to eat any kind of sweet that she has previously hoovered suggests to me a degree of principle that cynics like me often suggest is lacking. So, what is this guy's problem? Pigs get killed every day for food. Kids eat sausages and bacon like it's going out of fashion. The relationship between, I would argue, the field and the plate is something that children and many adults don't understand. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need on this one. If you want to tell me whose side you're on. The head teacher, I think, explains it brilliantly when they basically argue that the experience is real life. Vegan Vincent Cook argues that we need to teach kids where food comes from in a way that nobody gets killed. Nobody's getting killed, mate. It's a pig. We know much more now than we once did. There are better ways to educate children. I find it difficult to see how we can teach them to be compassionate to all around them when we choose to exploit the most vulnerable in the most hideous of ways. You need to help me out a bit here, because I can feel my slightly ugly side kicking in on this. I'm about to start taking the mickey out of Vegan Vincent Cook, and that would be unattractive, certainly. Not necessarily unfair, but possibly unfair. He says, I've been talking to the school for the last 3 months trying to encourage them to send the pigs to an animal sanctuary. The sanctuary said it would cover all the costs, so for the school to send them to a farmer who will definitely kill them is actively working against us despite the support we have received. The plan was to turn the pigs into sausages and serve them up in the school canteen, I think. And then there's a picture of a bloke hugging a cow in some of the newspaper coverage. They've offered to pay all the costs, including transportation of the 6-month-old piglets, which have been in the school since September, and the school have turned around and said no. 0345 6060 973. I think that this is silly, and I appreciate we all need to feel causes. If you're built a certain way, you want to feel that you're doing the work of the righteous. You're on the side of the angels. And I salute Vegan Vincent Cook for his stand. I really do. And I salute him for his principles. But I think he's profoundly wrong. It's not difficult to hold both of those positions. I would rather that this petition had happened. I would rather that this story had reached the newspapers. I would rather that this argument was unfolding in public. It's an important argument. Anyone who's seen some of the literature or filmed work recently surrounding meat as food will know that there's something of a sea change underway. The younger generation are eating considerably less meat than we did, partly because of cost, partly because of ethics. And we care a lot more about slaughtering and husbandry and transport and things like that. And you do occasionally, if like me you enjoy meat to an almost religious degree, you do occasionally wonder whether... I'll tell you what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Simon Amstel, you know, the genius comedian, who made a film recently, the name of which eludes me, but it's the kind of thing that's going to pop into my head before we hit the next break, so bear with. He made a film recently that posits a mythical future, a fictional future. I don't know if you've seen it. And what happens is, 30, 40, 50 years from now, eating meat would be akin to something that's really gross now. He draws some pretty big parallels. So something that we used to do years ago that we would never dream of doing anymore. How about sending children up chimneys? or even actually the stigma of having been a meat eater is so profound in this fictional future created by Simon Amstel that I'd probably put paedophilia on the lists of things that it stands comparison with, odd though that sounds. And it's really persuasive because, like the best art, it really makes you think. And you sit there, you've got people at a picnic and you've got sort of sausage smugglers and you've got this kind of notion that this utterly shameful practice now, looking back from a perspective of a few decades hence, people genuinely can't believe that their fellow man used to eat their fellow mammals. Think about it for a minute. Sort of trying to explain it to a spaceman. You do what? So they can breathe. And they have nervous systems very similar to yours. And they have children. And they breed. And they breed. They breathe and they breed. And then you kill them and eat them. You can see almost, I can't because I'm too entrenched in my own bigoted meat loving. But you can sort of see how that works, can't you? I think you can. And that's the world we inhabit. A world that's always changing. Often for the good, sometimes for the bad. So, against that backdrop, pick a side, all right? 0345 6060 973. As I say, I've bent over backwards to applaud Mr. Cook for his position, but I do also think he's barking up entirely the wrong tree. And that if you want to teach kids about how sausages end up on their plate, the best way you can do it, especially if, like Mr. Cook, you're keen to discourage them from eating pork, the best way you can do it, surely, is for them to strike up some sort of sentimental, vaguely anthropomorphic relationship with a pig and then take it off to be slaughtered. They're never going to look at a sausage straight in the eye again. Being a little glib, serious question, but we can have some fun with it. 2 phone lines free. If you want one of them, grab it now. 0345 6060 973. How can you not teach children where food comes from without exposing them to the reality of slaughter? I could imagine, do you know, we live in such an interesting age, don't we? Because do you think if it was the other way around, there'd be a petition? If this was in a city school rather than a rural school, there might be a petition saying, I want my kids to carry on eating sausage and bacon, but I most definitely do not want them to be exposed to the reality of slaughtering the pigs that would produce the sausage and the bacon. For grounds of squeamish, didn't Jamie Oliver or Gordon Ramsay get into bother for this? For the polar opposite position from people who like eating meat who didn't want to see the reality of slaughter. I told you this was interesting. Be interesting after this. Vegans, pigs and primary schools. Something for everybody. Sarah is in Colchester. Sarah, what do you think?
I think ask the kids.
You think what?
I think ask the children what they think.
Don't be ridiculous. You can't ask children what they think. That way madness lies. They'd be living on an unleavened diet of jelly babies and fizzy pop.
Wouldn't most of them say, yeah, except for the vegetarians and vegans, they like sausages and bacon? Simple as that.
Yes, but that doesn't mean they want the 4 pet pigs to be sent to the slaughterhouse.
No, but how are they going to get their sausages and bacon otherwise?
Well, I've eaten sausages and bacon all my life. I've never set foot in a slaughterhouse.
No, well, they don't have to see the slaughterhouse, do they? But the piggies are going to go off there and they'll come back as bacon and sausages. I mean, yeah. That's the food chain.
Well, you put it like that. You sort of discount Vincent the vegan's position completely. His argument is, and it's not without merit, his argument is that actually sending them off to the slaughterhouse isn't teaching them about, sending the pigs to the slaughterhouse isn't teaching the children where the meat is coming from, because the meat, as far as the children are concerned, is still going to be coming from a van.
Well, I think this time they learned, isn't it?
Well, would you send the children?
Not what? To see the pigs being slaughtered?
Yes.
No.
Ah, well then your point falls down, doesn't it? Because they're not learning anything about where sausages and bacon comes from.
Well, they can go if they want, but I wouldn't have thought I would want to send my little child to see a pig being.
Well, then you shouldn't. Then you shouldn't feed them.
They should understand what the meaning of the word abattoir is.
Then you shouldn't feed them meat.
Oh God, I wish I hadn't done you.
Well, no, don't say that. Because I'm on your side on this one, but I kind of hear the words coming back at me, and my 9-year-old's already decided to give up meat, which is a real pain in the proverbials, actually, between you and me, Sarah. But if you're...
Well, my daughter, when she was 11, said, can I be a vegetarian, Mummy, but please can I keep eating sausages and bacon?
Well, that's what I thought mine would be like, but she's the real deal. Like, she's clearly a lot better raised than your daughter, and she's got really deep-seated principles. But if you really... I mean, because if the argument is, how on earth are kids going to learn about the food chain if they don't have knowledge of pigs being slaughtered? They're not really getting any knowledge of pigs being slaughtered. They're just petting a few pigs for a few months, and then, lo and behold, sort of a month after they disappear from the school, some sausages turn up.
Well, that's all right, but then when they're older, could they not go to the abattoir?
Yeah, maybe when they're older, but I hate it when this happens. I wish you hadn't called me. I'm trying to now argue you. I'm trying to argue you out of the position that I'm arguing people into.
You know, we all see these lovely cows and pigs and sheep in the fields and everything else, but it doesn't, you know, the beef and the lamb and the pork doesn't come by magic, does it?
No, but you're the squeamish one saying I don't think we should be sending the kiddies to the abattoir. I would probably be in favour of that, but then no one would eat another sausage again.
Well, there we go. That's all I thought.
Somebody think of the sausages. Tom's in Birmingham. Tom, what do you think?
Well, I think your daughter needs a big pat on the back. That's for starters, definitely.
I do. I joke about it.
To make that decision,
mate. I joke about it on air, but I'm quite proud of her. Actually, it's nice to see children weighing up evidence and arriving at decisions that are a little bit difficult for her.
Well,
when we have bacon sandwiches, poor little kid sits in the corner of the kitchen as I wave it under her nose, and sometimes she appears close to tears. Carry on.
Well, to be fair, I think there is, as you said earlier, there's definitely a little bit of a vegan revolution going on at the moment.
I think so.
And you can always tell if there's a vegan in the room because they'll tell you quite quickly normally. But I made the decision actually 9 months ago to sort of go through this journey of veganism, and I was like you, quite happy to eat anything, and was more than happy to probably chop the head of a pig in a field and eat it, no problem at all. You know,
you've never done that.
Well, probably not a pig. It's probably a little bit extreme. But no, I've killed animals and eaten them before.
What's the biggest animal you've killed and eaten?
Well, it might have been something I could have done with my hands, like a rabbit. But I never went and took a cow on. But I think what's important.
Hang on a minute. No, seriously, children that will be listening to this, never try and fight a cow, kids. All right, carry on.
No, definitely don't push them over. It's something that drunk people do in the southwest of England, I believe.
Yes.
But what I would say is with this story is it almost sounded to me like a little bit of a strange vegan experiment, to be honest, because as you said. It really does take children on a little bit of a journey of starting to understand exactly what eating meat is all about. And I think the fact that Guy's a vegan is kind of a little bit of a non sequitur in the argument, because ultimately he could be a vegetarian. It doesn't matter that he doesn't want to drink milk and eat butter and all the rest of it.
No, I know. Come off it. It's not splitting all those hairs. It doesn't matter whether he's a vegetarian or a vegan. It's just, what are you, the Vegan Liberation Front or something like that? Saying, why are you sticking People's Front of Judea? Why are you having a go at the vegans? He might just have been a vegetarian. The vegetarians are as bad as us. Why is it always the vegans getting a hard time? What about the vegetarians? They eat milk, the scumbags. Go on.
Well, I've got four daughters, the eldest of which is 7, and the baby is 18 months old. And
when did you last get a full night's sleep?
I haven't had one. I can't remember what it was, to be totally honest with you.
No.
But when I heard it about a story in a school, and I actually live in Hampshire, so I was quite interested in the story, I thought it was something that some sort of strange vegan liberation movement had actually done within a school and said, look, here's some pigs, enjoy them, and by the way, the punchline is we're going to execute them in front of you and you're going to eat them, and then no one will eat meat ever again. And I thought, wow, that sounds like a really extreme experiment, but actually it's the other way round. And I think that you identify the biggest problem is that ultimately the pigs are going to disappear from the school, and everyone's going to be a little bit sad that these 4 pigs have disappeared.
Yeah.
But they're actually not going to experience the fact that their 4 little friends are actually going to be killed and turned into bacon and sausages, and that's what they're going to get for their tea. But it would be a fantastic experiment to take them down the full journey and experience it. Then they would really get a flavour of.
But I'm pretty sure that Gordon Ramsay did that on the telly in front of his own kids, and the other lot kicked off. The people that eat meat but don't want to think about how grisly the slaughtering process can be kicked off. You can't win, can you, in modern Britain?
No. Well, we're hugely disconnected from what we eat in this country because of supermarkets. And if you imagine sort of 10, 15, 20 years ago, where, you know, even when I was a kid, you're thinking of walking past butchers where there are animals hanging up in the windows, and, you know, your grandma would go in and buy a bit off one of them. You know, we don't really do that anymore. It doesn't really exist.
Oh, you're
in the same
joking.
sort of context.
Mate, if you haven't had bacon, which involves the butcher asking you how thick it's been cut, then you've never had bacon.
Well, indeed, but you don't get that in the supermarket anymore, and all of the butchers are disappearing, aren't they, left, right, and centre, which I think is a real shame. But I think what's really interesting about the story is, as a vegan, I side with the school as a journey, but I think the school could do a little bit better to make the journey more realistic rather than disconnect them from actually the punchline of the whole story. And what I would say is that, to be fair, being a vegan is really, really hard work. It is. And vegans do fall off the wagon occasionally. I mean, I'll be honest, in the last 9 months, I've had a hangover that required bacon.
Yeah.
And
Well, you're not a vegan then. Sorry, mate.
Well,
how long do you have to stay off it before you're a vegan?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, to some extent, it's like everything with any sort of context. You eventually things will happen. You okay? You know, vegans eat stuff occasionally they didn't know wasn't vegan because they've done the best that they could, and it just so happened that they're eating something that wasn't vegan. They find out later.
So,
it's a bit of a learning journey.
No, of course it is. I'm being a little bit facetious, and I'm conscious that this in a couple of years is going to be one of those subjects I look back on and feel a little bit guilty about how facetious I used to be. But hey, none of us are perfect. So you knocked it on.
Heard it all.
You true. You knocked it on the head. In a nutshell, why? I suppose nutshells are a big part of your life now, Tom.
So, absolutely, they're everywhere. Particularly with children, they're all over the shop. But what I would say about it is that there are only 3 reasons to go vegan. There are only 3. One is the moral aspect of killing animals,
yes,
which wasn't the reason I went vegan, by the way. One is the health impact of changing your diet from a predominantly meat and dairy-based diet to a plant-based diet,
yes,
and the evidence for that is compelling. The biggest study of cancer in the whole of history was done in China and identified in villages where people had eaten a vegan diet their whole lives. There were no instances of cancer whatsoever. There's been stories about how...
Yeah, no, that's true. There's truth in that. And what's the third one?
Is the environmental aspect of it. And to give you a wonderful statistic I heard not long ago...
Does it involve cow flatulence?
It doesn't involve farting cows,
carry on.
But what it said was that if everybody on the planet, and bearing in mind that
I'm late
the
for the
planet
news.
is going this way, if everybody on the planet ate the same amount of meat that the average American does, there wouldn't be enough land mass on the planet just to grow the crops required to feed the cows, to feed the humans, let alone have enough room for the cows or the humans. So the amount of meat we are eating as a globe is wholly unsustainable, to the point that eventually it won't be a choice. You won't get the choice to eat meat.
Well, you will, but there'll be insects.
Well, they will, yeah, they'll be...
That's the next big thing, eating insects, which is already popular in many parts of the world. I heard a story about, on a different radio station, about a cheese in Italy. It comes from Sardinia. Actually, Tom, before you go, and I am late for the news, so a very brief answer to this. There's a cheese in Sardinia there's something called a cheese skimmer fly that lays its larvae in the cheese while it's ripening, and you eat the cheese with the maggots still wriggling in it. Would you eat that?
To be fair, even if I wasn't a vegan, I don't think I'd eat that personally. I think I'd have a day off cheese.
Oh, mate, I was quite tempted. So I wonder if they've got it in the Harrods food hall. We're slightly wary of doing these stories in a light-hearted fashion. That is very much my perspective, my personality crossed with my life experience. A story of a vegan campaign to stop a primary school in Hampshire sending 4 pigs to the slaughterhouse, and it does make me giggle. But of course, when you read that the head teacher involved in this story has been receiving death threats and quite astonishing abuse, you probably recognise that you shouldn't be too flippant. Similarly, I don't know if you remember the tale of the Wiltshire firefighters who rescued piglets and 2 sows from a fire in a barn. This is, a really sad story, actually, because we've just tracked down the farmer involved in that rescue, the farmer who owned the pigs. And to say thank you to them, she delivered a sort of bunch of sausages, organic sausages, to the fire station after the pigs that she saved were slaughtered, and she ended up receiving death threats from I suppose you'd have to say what would you call them, extremist vegans? That sounds like something Chris Morris would have done on Monty Python. Extremist vegetarians, but they exist and they're pretty nasty. They're pretty obnoxious. So my 9-year-old finds it hilarious that last time we did a vegan-based issue, one of the callers called me a corpse-eating psychopath, but we were laughing together. That rhetoric, though, probably does come from a rather uglier place than one which would allow us to laugh together. So whose side are you on, the head teachers or the vegan? 0345 6060973. I genuinely believe you might put more kids off eating meat by getting them to rear pigs and then offer them the resulting sausages and bacon for tea. I genuinely believe that. But it is just a belief. It's not really evidence-based. Sean is in Archway. Sean, what do you think?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello.
So basically, even though I understand your point and where you're coming from, it does make sense in some way. However, I do believe that there is another way to do it. I believe that these pigs don't deserve to obviously be killed. I think in order to educate the children, they need to... Excuse me, sorry, I'm just outside. They need to be educated
outside where?
by... Outside in a field with my dog.
Oh, fair enough. Well, don't lose your dog, whatever you do. Carry on.
All right, I won't. Yeah, so basically, I think by watching educational videos and once they've been informed of the situation, I think the children should be the ones to have the choice whether the pigs get slaughtered or not.
Why?
Because I think, well, they're the ones that we want to educate, right?
Well, I mean, you're a little younger than me, but the education system, I'm pretty sure, still entails teachers deciding how to educate children, not doing a quick round robin in the class and asking them what they want to be taught today or how they want to be taught it. They're being taught about how pigs end up as sausages. They don't have any say in whether or not the pig gets slaughtered because that's the process that they're being taught about. Be a bit like giving them a right to reject Pythagoras' theorem, wouldn't it, in some sense? Let's have a quick vote on whether you believe that the, what is it, the opposite and the adjacent squared is equal to the hypotenuse or something. Then if you don't like that, then you don't have to do it. This is how pigs end up on plates. And you can't give them the option of not ending up on a plate, otherwise you're not teaching them how pigs end up on plates. What do you think? Has he gone? Sarah is in Sortland in Norway. Hello. There's all sorts of strange things on the menu in Norway, but I probably shouldn't dwell on that. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I'm way up in the Arctic Circle.
Oh, lucky thing.
And the sun just came back yesterday, so I've been in the dark for 2 months. So it was like, yay! But talking about the animals and subject you're talking about, the pigs and stuff, I just thought you might like to know that in the autumn of last year, my daughter, who's in her last year of primary school, I got an email from the school saying, "Oh, we're teaching them about where food comes from and all that, and we're going to go take a trip to the local slaughterhouse, which is not a very big slaughterhouse on the road. And please let us know if you don't want your kid to go."
Yeah.
And everybody went. I think there was one Polish girl that chose not to go because she was a bit squeamish,
sure.
But everybody went. The 4 Muslim kids that were in there went. All of them, the whole shebang went. And that evening, and I was quite like, oh my God, and they said that we're going to see the whole thing from when the lambs go in, because it was, the lambs had come down from the mountain. And they gathered them all up in the autumn here in Norway. And then, they took them right through from start to finish, literally.
And they didn't do them any lasting harm. Did it turn anybody vegetarian?
No. Not at all. And I think...
Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be very keen to see the inner workings of an abattoir.
Well, I can't say I'm 100% sure because I didn't interview every child in the
Well,
class.
don't ring me again until you've done some research, Sarah, for goodness sake. What sort of a shoddy amateurish outfit do you think we're running here?
I tell you what, it's outrageous, isn't it? Yes, I haven't done a back check, but from what and we've got a Facebook group and stuff, and I didn't hear any negative comments from the kids, and there's only 17 kids in the class anyway, and I didn't hear anything negative. And from my daughter, who is pretty squeamish, anyway, I said to her, so what did you think? And she was like, oh, yeah. And I really asked her, what did you see? And she said, because I really wanted to know what it was like. And she said, yeah, well, they come in and then they get this gun thing in their head, which is a big spike that goes in. It's really fast. and then immediately they get hung up by the back legs, and there's one man, and he slits open there's a whole abdomen right down, and there's a massive, massive blood bucket underneath, Mum, and it collects all the blood. I was thinking, oh my God,
Yeah.
we're discussing this over dinner.
Do you know what that's for?
And what, the blood?
Yeah.
Oh, collecting the blood.
Black pudding.
They make black pudding and all that.
black pudding.
Well, we do eat it. Yeah. My kids eat blood pancakes. It's a big delicacy.
Is
here.
it? As I told you, I think you'll remember, I began the call by saying they eat some very odd things in Norway, but I did say we wouldn't dwell on that. So she benefited from it. She has
it's a good one.
She has a clear and... Sorry, you go on.
No, it's okay. I think she really benefited from it. Like I said, I didn't hear anything negative from any other kids, and I do get a lot of them around here on play dates and stuff, and nothing at all. And I thought to myself, were you still happy to eat meat? How do you feel about it? And she said it was fine, because she said the animals, they came in and they were out. I said, how were they treated outside? She said, well, they were in their little paddock outside, and they came in. I said, well, were they nervous? She said, I think when they came in the very narrow corridory bit where they get gated off, then I think they start to get a bit nervous. She said, but it's so fast, Mum. It's like, really? And I said, how do you feel? And she said, well, I see how they do it now. And she said, oh, when you see the meat all packaged up in plastic in the supermarket, you don't really think about that. She said, but now I think about it. And I said, would you continue to eat lamb and other meat? She said, yeah, as long as it's been treated nicely, I would.
Well,
she said, I think I'd like to eat Norwegian meat, raised meat, because then I know that it's been killed, they have to have a vet there all the time and yada yada. It's just the rules and regs here.
So do we, actually. I presume it's something to do with single market membership, and here are we thinking we were going to have a Brexit-free hour, but it's like chlorinated chicken. If you're not in the customs union or the single market, you don't have regulatory alignment. These regulations potentially could be reduced in Britain rather than retained. That's lovely. How old again? Forgive me.
Me or my daughter?
No, your daughter. I'm not that ungalant.
Yeah, she was last year primary, so she's
so year
11.
6, so she's 11, same age as my oldest. And that I think is the sense of it. That's why I'm surprised this happened in Hampshire. I don't want to pick too much on the fella at the heart of the story, but I wonder if he is what they call in Devon a grockle. I wonder if he's an incomer. I would have thought. I mean, the New Forest, which is one of my favourite parts of the country, routinely they have to release pigs after the acorn season to eat all the acorns so that the New Forest ponies don't eat them, because they're poisonous to the New Forest ponies. So there's a season. I hope I've got this right. Forgive me if I haven't, but I'm pretty confident I'm on thick ice. You release pigs into the New Forest where common land is still widespread, and they eat up all the acorns so that the New Forest ponies don't make themselves poorly by eating them subsequently. And that suggests to me that most people with roots in the New Forest, if you pardon the pun, are going to be pretty comfortable with the idea of pigs being killed for food. But I don't know if the father at this primary school, who recently adopted veganism, also recently adopted rural living. What a lovely call from Norway. Sarah, thank you so much. It's 11:45. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we are discussing the vexed case of the New Forest piglets, raised in a school. I must apologise, it was a secondary school, not a primary school, which puts I would have thought, an even stronger spin on the tale, doesn't it? If years 7 and, well, whatever it is, but these are kids over the age of 11, these are secondary school children. If they can't cope with an introduction to the facts of life and death regarding food that ends up on their plate, then, well, the schools let them down. I don't know. What I did during the break, I tried to imagine how I'd feel if it was my kids, given that one is practically a carnivore and one is an actual vegetarian. I think it'd be really interesting for both of them. Yeah, we're almost entirely on the side of the school. We need some more hardcore vegans. Lorna is in Newmarket. Lorna, what would you like to say?
Hello, I'm kind of stuck a little bit in the middle, but essentially I agree with you. Oh. I'm a vegetarian, and I became vegetarian when I was 9, so same age as your daughter.
Oh, lovely.
And
can I ask why, if you don't mind? Was there a tipping point?
Yeah, there was a tipping point. So I was on a holiday with family, and I saw some goats coming down from the mountainside with school children holding them, dripping in blood, and I was like, you know what? I don't want to eat that anymore. No. And that was it. I never ate meat again.
Fair enough.
I'm now a vet, so I've been to several slaughterhouses. I know the slaughter process probably better than a lot of people, but obviously I was a vegetarian before I became a vet. So that didn't change my experience. I'm now mum of twin boys who are almost 5, and they're vegetarian as well. However,
not through choice, though.
No, not through choice. Although now they're at an age where I ask them what they want to eat, and they will be shown the slaughter process. And if they choose to eat meat, then they can. Their dad eats meat. I've asked them repeatedly if they want to eat fish to try and get some protein in them, and they've refused. They sort of actively at school refuse meat and say, no, we don't want to. And that's all without sort of seeing the slaughter process. But that is something I'm very keen for them to see. So
How old will they be when you show them the slaughter process?
I don't know. So it was interesting to hear that the school in question, it's actually a secondary school. That does change things, I think.
Yes.
If it's a primary school, I'm really not sure what the appropriate age is. I think with my boys coming up to 5, I would be considering it soon, to be honest.
Really?
Because they know a lot about the world. They know a lot about animals.
No, fair enough.
And, I think in the olden days, kids did know. They did understand. They did see it. And I think if you're going to eat meat, you need to know where that meat comes from. And I've not got a problem with friends who eat meat and...
No, well, I mean, that, which is why we're going to get on famously, because it always strikes me as a bit like religion, this. It can be an absolutely wonderful thing until you start trying too hard to impose your beliefs on other people.
Yeah, and I've never done that. I do know vegetarians and vegans who do, and that kind of makes me quite uncomfortable. I had a friend who I thought was the perfect vegetarian. He only ate meat with a name, and I think that's perfectly applicable in this case. If he knew that the meat was well reared and well slaughtered, humanely so, then he would eat it. Now, I don't have the stomach for that, but I think that's a much more powerful way of inflicting a consumer choice, and if more of us did that, then I think there would be better welfare in this country. And
well, you're a vet. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to argue with about anything regarding animal welfare, given that that's your field of expertise. I wonder, and this is pure opinion, isn't it? Because I don't think we'll ever know. But I can't help thinking, the lovely Sarah in Norway notwithstanding, I can't help thinking this might put some kids off eating meat.
Yeah, and I kind of hope it does. I hope
exactly.
Those out, but I think it just needs to make kids think a little bit. And you always hear of children thinking that a steak grows in a polystyrene package, and that's really sad. If they really don't understand where that's coming from.
How long have you been listening to this programme?
Today, or
no, generally?
Probably about a year or so. I drive quite a lot. So.
No, that's brilliant. I can give you one of my anecdotes that some people will be groaning already at the memory of. But when my wife was doing a piece about self-sufficiency for a newspaper many years ago, there were all sorts of hilarious kind of upshots of this. That bloke off Clarissa and the Countryman came into our kitchen to help us kill a lobster, and it bit him, and the blood actually spurted. You know, when blood, you're a vet, you're used to it, sometimes gets almost like turbocharged. And it took us, there was blood stains on the kitchen ceiling for years afterwards. Yes, no, it wasn't the artery. But the chickens that we got in our back garden when lived in a kind of old estate in London, and the back garden was a yard, so the chickens didn't have much to do or anywhere to go, but it was lovely keeping them. And the lad next door, who was a bit of a geezer, if you will, I offered him some eggs. I said, do you like eggs? And we were chatting over the wall. We didn't talk very often, but we were having a chat over the wall. And I said, do you like eggs? He went, yeah, I like eggs. And I said, well, here you go, I'll get you a couple. And I went and got him some from the hen house and brought them back. And he went, no, man, I don't want those. They just come out of a chicken's bum. And I said, well, where do you think all the other eggs come from? And he said, the shops. And this is as true, not a word of a lie. And that's why the head teacher at this school is doing what he's doing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I applaud them for it.
I do.
It kind of goes against my personal principles because it's not something I choose to do. But I think I've made that choice with knowledge, and I think if everybody made a choice with knowledge, then we'd be in a much better situation, wouldn't we? Whether it comes to being vegetarian or anything else. So.
The B word.
Yeah.
11:55 is the time if we made a choice with knowledge. Oh dear. Speaking of choices made without knowledge, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with all the comedy that's surrounding UKIP's latest problems. As I understand it, the UKIP National Executive, or UKIP as a party, made a decision, but they had a vote. They realised they'd made a mistake, and now they want to change their minds. Seems absolutely reasonable to me. That's what democracy is, isn't it? If you vote and then the facts render you realising that it was the wrong vote, then you should have another vote and be free to change your mind about the last vote. Why would anybody be laughing at that or suggesting that that's improper behaviour? Very strange times we live in. Lorna, thank you. Craig's in Woking. Craig, what would you like to say?
Hello.
Hello.
Well, I feel like I should know better than to phone in opposition to you, but I'm on the side of Vincent the vegan.
Yes.
On this one, yeah, I kind of think the headmaster and his reasoning for wanting to show the kids where the food comes from, I think it's a little bit fallacious in a way, because they're going to be looking after these pigs. Well, they have looked after the pigs and stuff, so they send 4 little piggies, and they're like, yay, pigs, hooray! And then they go away, and witchcraft happens, and then they go, sausages, hooray, when it all comes back. And I think that's not quite how it happens. I mean, the supermarket own brand sausage rolls that they'll be eating for their lunch or you know, whatever they buy, they don't come from the happy farms, and they don't get raised by happy people.
Oh, this is a good point. So that you're teaching them a slightly rose-tinted view of slaughter.
Much more succinctly put, yeah.
I agree with you.
I think, and so yeah, I think it's an
because I get a little bit dewy-eyed with all the New Forest stuff. In fact, I think I was guilty of that a moment ago, wasn't I? And talking about what I'm told is called panage or panage, when they send the pigs in to eat up all the acorns. So I'm thinking of that. I'm not thinking of, what do they call it, mechanically recovered meat that's been put in a sausage or in some, you know, economy.
Mechanically recovered. That sounds lovely, doesn't it?
Well, you're the one. I'm on your side on this one, mate. That's what you're saying. If you really want to teach kids about what they're eating, teach them about mechanically recovered meat that is sort of picked out of the trotters by a machine. I made that up, but I think it's close to the truth.
I think so.
Yeah, I'm going to agree and disagree, because I'm going to say you're absolutely right. They are getting a slightly rose-tinted view of how it goes on, but it's also a view of how it sometimes goes on. So in the absence of, you know, a full perspective on the issue, I would argue that this is better than nothing.
Yeah, but then at the same time, to teach this particular lesson, they don't need to kill the pigs, because if they are just seeing the pigs and being, yay, pigs, and the pigs disappear, they could disappear to a sanctuary, and then other sausages come in, because they're still missing out on the whole process in the middle. So, you see what I mean?
Sort of, yes. But, I mean, you're being a bit scorched earthy. I would have thought that having a kid realise that a sausage comes from a pig that used to be alive is better than having a kid thinking that a sausage comes out of a sausage machine, like on Punch and Judy.
Yeah, well, you know, but fingers crossed, hopefully you're right, and people will see that and think, oh, actually, I don't want to eat meat anymore.
That hasn't worked for me, but you know, my life is a work in progress. 11:59 is the time. Craig, thank you. Should we squeeze in a Colin? I think we should. We've only got a couple of seconds, Colin, so make it snappy. What would you like to say?
2 things. My wife and I decided we would get rabbits when we had children.
It sounds like you're down a rabbit hole. I don't know if you can improve the quality of your phone line.
Oh, hang on a second. I'll take it off.
When I said a couple of seconds that when Beth said, please don't go on hands-free, we were trying to avoid press the snappy. Sometimes I can't make it really.